Hello, my name is Roger Sloan, and I'm a member here of the Cookstown Reformed Presbyterian Church. And with me today, I have young Daniel Moore. He has recently returned from 4 months of short-term service in the Gambia. So we're going to ask a few questions to Daniel, just to find out a bit about himself and a bit about the work in Gambia. So, Daniel, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, Roger, thank you very much for having me. As you said, I'm Daniel. I'm 19 years old, and I'm a member of Lisburn RP Presbyterian Church in the Irish Synod. And I'm happy to answer all your questions.
Thank you. Well, how did you hear about the opportunity to serve in the Gambia, and is this something that you were always interested in? Had you thought about doing mission work before? What motivated you to want to go and serve in the Gambia?
Well, if I could jump to the third question first. I've not always been motivated to do mission work, to be honest with you. I had been wanting to take a gap year from studies. I just finished school. I'm going to university now in October, and I had been wanting to do volunteering work in a developing country through a charity. I've always been a Christian, but I considered mission work not to be my calling. I'm happy to pray and support mission in other ways.
Okay.
But actually, my pastor, Robert McCollum, suggested to me that there was a Reformed Presbyterian Church in the Gambia, and that I might be useful there as short-term service. So it was purely due to my pastor's encouragement and his guidance over that.
Okay, and then what was the process for you in order to go on the short-term service? Did you have applications, or tell us about that?
Yeah, so I got in contact with some of the people in the Gambia. Pastor Sylvester Conte is the organising pastor of the congregation, and Scott as well, who works with a charity called the Gambia Partnership. And after investigating the work a little bit, we decided that it would be something where I could be useful, something that suited me as well. So I sent off my application to the mission committee for short-term service, and heard back a few weeks later. I was accepted, and that was great. But by that time, I had already been having many conversations with some of the members of the congregation in Brikama, which is where the church is based. And I already knew quite a lot about the country, so I was very happy that I was accepted because my heart was already set on going.
That's good. So it all happened then quite quickly, and once the ball got rolling.
Yeah. So my application got back in, I think, late December, early January, and by February I was on a plane heading to Banjul.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, I certainly didn't know a lot about the Gambia, so maybe you could spend some time just telling us about the country, or the population, and just things that you think would help us understand a bit better about the country of the Gambia.
Well, the Gambia is a beautiful and very diverse country in West Africa, but it's also a tiny country as well. It's famous for its beaches and its bird life, 580 species of birds, and because of those reasons, it's been really popular with European tourists who come. But most Europeans that visit the Gambia don't actually see most of the Gambia and the Gambian population as well. The tiny country, which is smaller than Yorkshire, is actually home to 2.5 million Gambians and some other citizens from other West African countries as well, of course. And these are some of the people I got to know, and the people that the church is serving in Brikama, which is the second largest city.
Okay, so tourists would tend to go to like the tourist hotspot areas of the
That's
Gambia,
correct. Yeah.
but then there's lots elsewhere that they don't get to see. What about the religious makeup of the country? What's the predominant religion in the Gambia?
So the predominant religion is Islam. That would make up about 96% of the population. Most of the remaining 4% would be Christians. There's some African traditional religions as well, but they're very much dying out with the rapidly increasing spread of both Islam and Christianity. But the Christians there would be predominantly Roman Catholic, and predominantly the ones who would not be Roman Catholic would subscribe to the welfare gospel and be part of some Pentecostal or charismatic church. The Islam in the Gambia is quite tolerant of the Christians. There's not a lot of persecution. Everyone gets on quite well. There's no tribal disputes either. And there hasn't been any sort of civil war or disruption for a long time. So it's a peaceful country, but it's made peaceful by people's, I suppose, casualness in relation to religion. So no one is taking, even many Christians would be attending the Muslim feasts and joining in with a lot of the Islamic traditions as well.
So slightly more nominal in their practice then of
Absolutely.
of their religion. Okay. What about even the working environments? What type of jobs and industries are there? What about the language? What else can we learn about the Gambia?
Yeah, well, so apart from tourism, which is quite regional and very seasonal as well, that brings in most of the money, but most of the population is involved with agriculture of some sort, whether it's farming or rice fields or mainly small vegetable gardens clustered around villages throughout the Gambia.
Okay, thank you. Well, hopefully that helps us understand a little bit more about this environment that Daniel went into. But another good question would be, why is there an RP church in the Gambia? What's it like? Who's it made up of? And then maybe after that we can get on to how it ended up being in the Gambia.
Well, the RP congregation in the Gambia is in Brikama. As I said, it's the second largest city, so we call it Brikama Reformed Presbyterian Church. It's actually a member congregation of the Scottish Presbytery, and it's as of May, just last May. So the most recent congregation to join the Scottish Presbytery, but also the second largest as well. We have about 75 people attending morning worship, and new people come every week, and the membership is expanding as well. As I said, the minister is Pastor Sylvester Conte. He's not a Gambian, he's a Sierra Leonean, but he's been living in the Gambia for many years and has been acting as a pastor in the Gambia for many years as well.
Okay, and how then did this pastor, Sylvester Conte, how did he get in connection with or in touch with the RP Church, specifically in Scotland? Where did that connection come from?
That's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that one. Because it's a wonderful story. So Pastor Conte has been a charismatic pastor for a number of years. That's why he ended up in the Gambia in the first place as a missionary from a Sierra Leonean church. But he had become dissatisfied with the lack of impact of his prophecy. Well, the lack of his impact of his prophecies coming true, his lack of spiritual healing gifts, for example. Sometimes they worked, sometimes they did not. And that was causing him to question whether or not even the gospel could be true. But it was through the influence of the charity called the Gambia Partnership, which is based in Stornoway, and particularly the work of a man called Scott McIver, who met Sylvester Conte by providence and helped him, encouraged him to consider the Reformed gospel and to relook at what the Bible taught about Jesus' work, the work of the apostles, and the work of us today. And one of the ways he does that is by providing literature through the Gambia Partnership as well, to make them consider doctrines they maybe haven't thought about before, like perseverance of the saints, or the sovereignty of God. And the response to that has been really, really encouraging. Suddenly, parts of the gospel, parts of the human experience that didn't make sense to these Christians are fitting into place. And they realize how God does have a plan for them and how God is keeping them and protecting them. And because of that, there's a natural progression to a more reformed way of doing things. Some would say a more biblical way of doing things. And that's brilliant because the whole shift in that area has been away from Pentecostalism. There's been a lot of people that have been hurt by the charismatic church. And rather than falling away, they're finding a place in a reformed church.
That's fantastic. No, thank you for sharing that, Daniel. It's been really interesting just to hear how God's providence has brought this all together and caused this to happen. Yeah, well, this ends now part one of our discussion with Daniel, and hopefully he'll be joining us again for part 2 soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.